struggling. All right. I'm going to hand it over to Nicole Killoran, who will moderate this panel. Thank you so much, Nicole.
All right. Hello, everybody. Let me move the thing over here so it doesn't look like I'm looking at the wrong part of the screen. Okay. So very excited to talk to you about this program. I am actually the least educated person about this program. The other people on the panel are going to be the people who actually know what they're talking about. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves. You can see their names here, briefly who they are. Let me show you what the agenda is, and then I'm going to have them introduce themselves. So we're going to touch briefly on what the heck the bar exam is. It's a big phrase. People know usually you have to do it to become an attorney. What the heck is it? What's tested? We'll do an overview of the law office study program. What's required? What's the structure? How do you find a mentor? How do you build that network that you're trying to build to get into practice? How do you build the course of study? And then how do you do reporting? We have some links to resources at the end. But as I said, this is going to be basically me saying what I think the program is and what I know about the program, and then the people who actually run the program or who have been through it are going to help you with the realities, what it looks like on the ground. So I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves, starting with Andrew Strauss. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. So I'm Andy Strauss. I am licensing counsel, which basically means that I help people get admitted to the Vermont bar. I administer the bar exam. I help people from out of state who want to come and get licensed here, get licensed. I've been doing this job for about 7 or 8 years, and I was a litigator for about 15 years before that, mostly as a deputy state's attorney in Chittenden County. And one part of my role is to help the law office study program run. And I've been doing that for the last 7 or so years. We've been making steady improvements with it over the years. And it's great to have two people on the call who have completed the program and are or will be very soon practicing attorneys in Vermont.
Yes, agreed. Kira, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Kira Botting. I am a second-year attorney at the law firm of Russo and Ross in Lebanon, New Hampshire. I did my legal education through the law office study program. I was a frequent visitor of Andy Strauss's email during my time. So don't hesitate to use him as a resource. But yeah, I graduated the program in December of 2022, took and passed the bar in February of 23, was licensed in, I want to say, August of 23, and have been practicing since. So I am very happy to share my experience, any tips I have to anyone who's interested in the program, especially you guys.
Nice. Thanks. And Samantha, she's even more recently been through the program.
Yes, very, very recent. My name's Samantha Avant. I work at Bauer Gravel Farnham in Colchester. And I just finished the program a couple months ago. I took the February bar and I got my results like 8 days ago. I passed. So I'm still sort of right and envisioning what comes next. So yeah, I think I've got a month and change to go before I'm officially licensed. And yeah, same with Kira. I'm a huge advocate of the program. It goes without saying how meaningful it was to have such an opportunity. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or chat with anyone.
Cool. Thank you. So we've got the person who's running the program. We got somebody who's a couple years into practice. We got somebody who's just starting as an attorney, but has been working in the firm for 4 years for the program, right, Samantha? So a couple different people to give you perspective. I think that's going to help. What is the bar exam? This is the gate. This is the gate to the profession, and there's a lot of gatekeeping in this profession. So it's in Vermont, this is a 2-day exam. It's offered at 2 different times of the year, in late July or late February. There is, you have to get a passing score on the exam in order to be licensed as an attorney in Vermont, or in any other state. You have to pass the bar exam. There's 2 ways to be able to sit to take the bar exam. You have to be qualified to sit to take the bar exam. You can either do it through law school, or you can do it through an apprenticeship in some states. Vermont is one of the few states that allows that. I think Arizona is another one. There's perhaps one other state after that. Very few states that allow an apprenticeship approach to practicing law. Vermont is one. So that's the law office study program. It's an alternative path. When you sit to take the bar exam after you've taken the LOS, after you've done the LOS program, you are said to be reading the bar. You're not taking the bar exam, you're reading the bar exam, or maybe there's a different meaning to taking. Anyways, there's a current bar exam, which is tested one way, and then there is the next gen bar exam, which if anybody who's in this meeting goes on to do the LOS program, they will be taking the next gen bar exam. That kicks in July 2027, I think. Currently, the bar exam tests a bunch of core legal subjects. They're generally isolated to one one subject per question. It's timed multiple choice, timed essay. There is also the practice-oriented timed written assignments that you see there. That's what we call multi-state performance test, MPT. This is where you get a case file basically, and it's an approximation of what you might get in a firm or some other practice setting. Emphasis on individual areas of substantive law. Believe it or not, currently the bar exam does not contain much practice-oriented skill testing, mostly substantive knowledge. The next gen bar exam is trying to change this to theoretically better test people for their ability to practice law. So starting July 2027, the core legal subjects will still be tested, but there will be multiple subjects included sometimes in questions. There will also be the addition of practice skills, lawyering skills. I'll show you the list of those in just a second. So again, the next gen really is, as from what I can see, and maybe I'll take your opinion on this too, Andy. It's taking the bar exam from simply memorization to actual application to the practice of law and adding that layer. But I haven't seen it administered yet, so who knows? Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I'm very much looking forward to the next gen bar exam. So the main difference is that there are fewer core subjects that are tested and more practice subjects that are tested, such as client counseling, legal research, negotiation skills. So you have it there. This was the product of many, many years of study by the National Conference of Bar Examiners, which is the organization that creates the bar exam for us and almost 40 other jurisdictions. And they had asked lawyers and other people in the legal field across the country, what should we have on the bar exam? And the overwhelming answer was, you need more lawyering skills. And the great thing about the next gen bar exam, I think, is that I think it'll be much better suited for people coming out of the law office study program. Because one of the advantages of the law office study program, I think, is that as opposed to people going to law school, you're coming out of, you're taking the bar exam and you have actual lawyering skills. Whereas somebody coming out of law school, maybe they've done a clinic here or there, but usually somebody who's in the law office study program, they are in a law office. They are a paralegal. They've been working with, next to lawyers for 4 years. So I have high hopes that the pass rate for the law office study program participants will increase significantly with the next gen bar exam in a couple of years.
Yeah, I can see that. I agree that you're right. You're just much better prepared when you work in a law office for 4 years as opposed to go to law school. That is, and I teach at a law school, so I graduate people who are not as well prepared to practice law. So you can see the subjects here. These are the main subjects that are tested, and maybe you can correct me, Andy. I thought that we were doing the same subjects for next gen, but there's a few cut out. Do you know which ones are cut?
Yeah, there's a few that are cut out. Let me see if I can find it.
I must have gotten this one wrong. That's just why we have our panel. Thank you, panel.
Let me see what's.
I feel like family law might have been removed, wasn't it?
I thought that was, I thought family.
It was removed and then it was put back in.
Whoops, so we really need that one.
So there are 14 on the current one and 9 on the new one. So business associations.
I don't even have business associations on there. Weird.
Contract law, criminal law, evidence, family law, real property, and torts. So I
Yeah,
think
actually.
secured transactions is no longer on there. Trusts and estates is no longer on there. Conflict of laws is no longer on there.
And I'm missing business associations.
And business associations is on there. So corporations.
Okay. Okay, so apologies, guys. I missed one of the, I must have missed a bullet point to type on there. But so we'll go through these topics so you can sort of understand. I'm not gonna try and give you like a substantive lecture on what these areas of law are, but I do want to give you an idea of what is going to be studied in the course of study for these different topics. When you go to law school, you have individual classes that take an entire semester, 4 months, 4+ months to just dig in on one topic. And, you know, for example, civil procedure, you learn the rules, you read a bunch of cases, you read about how the rules are applied to real life situations, you learn that way. Law office study program, you're going to be doing actual civil procedure cases if you're in a firm like that, for example. So the different areas. Civil procedure is basically the what happens when people are suing each other in a non-criminal case. Things like contract disputes, personal injuries, divorces. That's civil procedure, the rules around what happens in court for those cases. Business associations, which I forgot to add to the previous list, that's just what happens when people join up to make a for-profit or a nonprofit enterprise. When they're doing business together or they're trying to make money, how do they set up a separate entity and do that? Conflict of laws, as Andy said, it's not really going to be tested. This has been tested, but it's tested associated with different areas of law. Conflict of laws is just testing our knowledge of how do you handle laws from different jurisdictions, different states, federal versus state, et cetera. Constitutional law is a pretty core area. That is not just what the Constitution says, but how is federal versus state governance handled? What are the fundamental rights protected under the Constitution and under the amendments? How are those enforced? How are they evaluated when someone is claiming that there's a violation of a fundamental right? Also includes things like states' rights, checks and balances with different branches of government, what things the states can regulate versus the federal government can regulate, et cetera. Contracts is really just contracts. Anytime that two people make an agreement between each other, that's a contract. It can be verbal, it can be written, but there's a lot of law around how contracts are written, how they're accepted, how they're enforced, and there's some special rules with certain transactions in contract law. Criminal law and procedure, if you're going to be in court arguing criminal cases, this is the substantive area. So this is how the legislature defines what different crimes are, how you prove those crimes, and how those cases are handled in court when they go through court. Evidence is how information is introduced into court. When there needs to be some proof for a case, how does the court take that information in, and how do they evaluate it to make sure it's reliable information? Family laws, things like divorce, custody, termination of parental rights, all of that stuff, I highly recommend. I don't highly recommend. I highly respect the people who practice family law because it is so much pain and a lot of people going through really hard times in their lives. Real property is, as opposed to personal property. Personal property is just the things that you own. Real property is the land, the buildings. There's a whole area of law that tests people's knowledge on how property is sold, how it's divided up, how it's owned, how it's passed down through the generations, how it's leased and used. Secured transactions is the rules around borrowing money, basically investment money. Torts is what happens when somebody is injured or their property is injured. And then trusts and estates is basically how do you protect future money? How do you set it aside for your family? How do you potentially put somebody into a guardianship so that if an adult or a child can't make decisions for themselves? Or what do you do with someone's stuff after they die? So those are the areas of law that are tested. You can see they're very different areas of law. They're going to require very different substantive study. There's also the addition of the lawyering skills. And as Andy said, the fact that if you go through the law office study program, you're going to be in a firm or in a setting where you are doing practice, you are actually engaging with clients. These skills come along with it. There's a particular angle, a particular way to approach legal research and writing. There's a way to write like a lawyer. There's a way to write effectively, persuasively. There's a way to structure one's argument so that you include the appropriate citations to authority. All of that goes into legal writing. It is a specialized skill. Legal research is a specialized skill as well. Can start with Googling, but might involve paid engines research and drilling down to the particular support for a legal point that the lawyer's trying to make. Issue spotting is what you basically do the more that you learn about the law. If you know more laws, you can look at a person's situation and you can see the legal issues stick out and say, oh, that needs this, that needs this. Investigation evaluation is basically fact development for cases. Client counseling, being able to talk to clients. This is something law students can't do very well because, as Andy said, they're not in practice. They don't have a lot of face time with clients. Negotiation, dispute resolution, that is an enormously important part of practice because litigation cases don't go to trial, except for maybe like 2% of the time. They're almost always settled or negotiated. So negotiation, dispute resolution, how do you get people to resolve things? How do you get them to find common ground? It's a very important skill. And then just managing clients is a skill in and of itself. Setting expectations, making sure that clients understand, explaining the law to them, being able to negotiate fees and things like that. That's a whole skill set. Way.
Thank you. You'll all get to know that I have a lot of questions all the time, and Nicole is very lovely. First of all, excuse my language, holy shit, this is a lot of stuff to know and to absorb, even as like just to from like outside perspective. And this is so helpful to know like what is included, what is not included, and what is added to next gen, which is really wonderful that it includes all of these other topics. So and maybe this is something that will be answered later on, with the law office study program, if you are apprenticing under somebody that has a specific field, how do you get to know these other subjects that you have to be tested on?
Yes.
I would love to answer. I would love to answer.
Please do, Kara, go for it.
So the firm that's exactly the situation that I was in, because my supervisor for the program specialized in torts. So the primary, exposure I got to the law on this list would be torts, contracts. I had to review a lot of insurance contracts, civil procedure when we have to bring a lawsuit or take a lawsuit to trial, conflict of laws sometimes, evidence in any case that is being prepared for trial or goes to trial. But really everything else I had to learn separate from my work. So one thing I did was I found syllabi from law schools to identify readings, horn books, which are essentially collections of important cases for a subject. And as much as I could in my spare time, on the weekends, on evenings, I worked full-time as a paralegal and clerk for this firm. I would review those subjects by readings. I would also review the subjects by watching case summary videos, doing little short lectures, doing little multiple choice quizzes, whatever was available generally online that was accessible. You'll find if you do proceed with the program that there is no bar prep program that is available and open for you to use for 4 years. Every bar prep company, Barbary, Themis, I'm sure there are others, they generally restrict your access to the materials for the period of time in which generally law school grads have time to study. So for instance, in law school, you graduate in May, you study till you take the test in July. It's like 2 months where you're all in, you're 100% doing it. And so the courses, they're sort of geared and designed for those students. And I think intellectual property wise, they don't want you to have access to their materials for a long amount of time. So they give you a short amount of time to access the materials, but that kind of information would be really beneficial for law office studies students to access over an extended period of time. So what I did was there was one course, Barbary's Extended US Bar Prep course, I believe it was, that is actually designed for part-time students who might be foreign, or maybe like foreign lawyers, part-time students, that kind of thing. And that program was accessible for 6 months to 10 months. So I got the 10-month version. I started using it early, but I had a lot of time beforehand to explore these other subjects. And I often felt that I wondered if I was doing the right thing. It was a little overwhelming, but it all ended up being okay based on the study that I was able to do toward the end when I really focused in on bar prep. And I also supplemented my work with my supervising attorney with shadowing other attorneys. So if you do have a supervising attorney who specializes in one field of law, which is generally the case. There are general practitioners who practice multiple realms, but a lot of people do specialize. And so you'll find that you do have to maybe utilize their professional network to shadow attorneys, shadow judges. I did that for a couple days. I sat in a courtroom. You can go to trials. I wrote a will for another attorney. I just sort of like spread myself out to get exposure. And I felt that that was really helpful in me putting to better memory what I was learning through books. Because one thing that's really beneficial about this program is if you are not the strongest student academically, this program, like in terms of reading, like you learn by doing, you learn being hands-on, you learn through experience. This program is really wonderful for you because you can exercise that. And you have total control over the way that you learn. So take agency over that, utilize your supervisor's professional network, network yourself. I'm sure many attorneys would be happy to have a free intern for a day if you just shadow them. So yeah, there are many ways to get exposure to these areas beyond just your supervising attorney.
And I imagine that with the next gen bar exam, it'll be more accessible as well in terms of like doing all that work and then also taking the exam.
Yeah, I think that the next gen bar exam, like these particularly like issue spotting, investigation, and evaluation, client communications. I think there's also some components of professional ethics and negotiation.
Yeah.
Relationship management. All of these skills are skills that are really prime for law office study participants to learn. Hands-on, like this is what you're doing. When I was a paralegal, I was the first point of contact for every client. So I had to utilize my client management skills every day. I had to utilize negotiation skills when I was assisting with a mediation or helping negotiate a pre-litigation settlement. Like there were so many opportunities for me to just naturally develop these skills, and which is really wonderful. So I'm really glad to hear that the next gen bar exam is going to have these, because historically, as Andy will probably tell you, the law office study participants pass the bar at a lower rate than law school students. Even still, law school students pass at a fairly low rate. It's pretty unfortunate. I think it's like a 50 or 60% rate, which is ridiculous. People who pay 3 years, spend 3 years of their life and God knows how much money to learn the law. But law office study students, I think it's even 10% less than that. So hopefully this next gen bar exam really opens up access to the profession to people who study in alternative methods. So I think it's wonderful. I think it's going to be perfect for us.
So Nicole, I have a question for you now.
Yeah.
I don't know that everyone on this call knows exactly what the law office study program is.
That would have been a great place to start, wouldn't it? Okay. So I think, well, let's go back to this. The law office study program is one of two ways to take the bar exam, which is what you need to do. That's the gate to become an attorney, a licensed attorney in the state. You go to law school and pay a bunch of money, as has been mentioned, or can do the apprenticeship, the law office study program. And that involves 4 years of study under the supervision of an attorney or a judge who has at least 3 years experience. And I think an undergrad degree as well goes into that. So basic requirements, that's the basics for it. But it's an alternative path. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Andy, so you just muted, but you have to unmute again. Is there people who graduate from this program, they are restricted to Vermont licensure for their career, correct? There's no reciprocity between states?
There is a little bit, but it's kind of few and far between. I don't know if Kira or Samantha have looked into it, but it's pretty hard to get licensed in other states after doing the law study program. Some states will let you sit for their bar exam if you've practiced a certain amount of time. But no other state will let you sit for their bar exam right after the completion of the law office study program. So that is the one limit. That is the one limitation, or one of the limitations of the law office study program, is that it really, you have to be in Vermont.
Yeah. I actually, I had the fortune of spending a year deciding whether I wanted to even enroll in the program. My supervisor essentially gave me the opportunity to do the program before I had finished my undergrad degree. So I went back to school to finish my undergrad degree. To get that prerequisite, you do need a BA or a BS in order to be eligible to enroll in the program. So I used that year to reach out to some and review some states' rules of admission. And even states like, for instance, Washington has their own law office study program, as does Virginia. New York has like a hybrid version where you can do 2 years, I think, of law school, 2 years of study, something along those lines. Vermont as well. But
right, the Pro Bono Scholars Program, that's what it's called. Okay, sorry.
New Hampshire is the only state that actually creates in their rules a path for you to become licensed in their state after doing the law office study program. Most state, and that's after 3 years. So, and that's my plan. My firm is in New Hampshire. We're on the border of New Hampshire and Vermont. So being licensed in both states is going to be really wonderful for my client base. But other states, even I think Maine, New York, states that are sort of in New England and you think would have the same mindset, their rules are really prohibitive, where they require a JD even for you to transfer your score upon years of admission. So some states will have rules that you can transfer your admission after however many years of practice, or you can sit for their bar exam after however many years of practice. But often the prerequisite, you just got to look carefully. Do they require a JD or an LLM, LLB, for an alternative? And often that's where the door stops. So it's really there is the potential for that to change, and I would love to see that change, especially, among neighboring states. But it is quite prohibitive in that you are, at this point, pretty limited, at least Vermont and New Hampshire, definitely. Beyond that, you just got to look into each rules, connect with their boards of admission.
Thanks, Kira. Great answer. I hope that it is that simple. It's just, how do you get to a law license and you don't want to go to law school? Here you go. And when I send over this presentation, I'll edit it to make sure that the subjects are correct on that. Eligibility and requirements, as I said, Kira just covered this too. Have to have a accredited institution degree, supervised by an attorney or judge, admitted for at least 3 years. Now the website says that you have to be working with an attorney or judge. So that's one of my questions to the panelists is, do you actually have to be employed by the attorney or judge that is supervising you in the program?
You do not. But my sense is that most people are employed by the person that they are apprenticed to.
Yeah. That's the sense I've gotten as well.
I think it would be difficult to not do it a different way, although it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the time requirement, you have to spend, what is it, Andy, a minimum of 25 hours a week on your study. So spending 25 hours a week without pay just might not be accessible for most people.
Right.
Yeah, it is possible, but not likely. And to be able to get to sitting for the bar, there's going to be a systematic course of study. We'll talk about that and how it's put together. It's going to be aimed at the general practice of law. All those topics that you saw on that previous screen, that is the general practice of law. That is most of the main areas of law that somebody who has a general practice might touch on. And then there's the report every 6 months to the Board of Bar Examiners, talking about progress and next steps that are going to be taken. That's the basic for the requirements for the program, unless I'm missing anything. Again, I have our experts here. Is that it?
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
Camera on. I got 2 kiddos. Someone was
You're
playing with my
fine.
phone. I know. So my name's Sasha. What I was more curious about too is like, how would the law also be affected in the midst of where we are, obviously in our government, right? Regardless of where your standpoint is, where you are. But I think the laws are going to change. So I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 8 years. And lately we had this new thing, it's like no DEI, right? That plays a huge role in obviously with law enforcement. Like we have to kind of somehow link those together, because how did that happen, right? And then how does that play a role with educators? Like, how does that look like? Like, how can I um want to pursue some type of degree in law, but the law is not helping me
Mm-hmm.
or my students?
And the law is also gatekeeping when it comes to being
Oh,
able to
oh yeah.
access the practice as well, right? It's not just that
Yes,
it's not accessible, it doesn't let you in.
mm-hmm. And that's all, and and that could be in many factors, right?
Hmm.
Whatever bracket you fall on, but that is an issue I feel like we didn't really touch on, but it's like this is reality here.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah. Thank you, Sasha. So I think what you're asking is, I'm not, I think it's sort of a question, but it's commentary on the fact that the law is changing rapidly,
Yeah.
that it's all very, very confusing, that what's up and down it's not really clear, and it's not clear what's going to touch on an average person either. What
Right.
will impact them, what will not. A lot of the conversations that we're having around the question of diversity, equity, and inclusion being sort of scrubbed from the
Mm-hmm.
nation, which is what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, those conversations have to do around funding. So, for example,
Yeah.
here at the Law and Graduate School, we have a lot of programs that are federally funded. And if any portion of our programming speaks to an interest in serving underserved communities and serving BIPOC and underserved communities,
Yeah.
we are at risk because the federal order that dictates how funding is going to be held, that
Mm-hmm.
controls the funding that's coming to our school and going to other institutes of higher education. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
what it means, there may not necessarily be conditions placed on the money, but there is a threat of enforcement that's
Yes.
going to quiet people
Yes.
from taking the money or running their programs, right?
Right.
So
And it's
yeah,
gonna,
that's
yeah, yeah.
go ahead.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
I
Sorry.
just wanted to bring that up because, we have a sanctuary school, so we have like a sanctuary classroom, but
Yes.
we have put those things in place because now it's like, ooh, we can't do this anymore, or ooh, we can't do that anymore. So it is something that has been heavy on my mind on how we're going to move
Absolutely.
forward, especially for the new generation. Because what can we do?
It's a backward step, and that's my personal opinion. And it's going to create a layer of fear for the next 3 or 4 years. We're going to
A-
have a generation
Absolutely.
that's going to have that fear that's going to, and hopefully that sting will fade for the next one. But yeah, I see the same thing.
Let us
It
pray.
cha- it, it chills their speech. Don't want to talk, don't want to say something wrong, right? So it
Yeah,
literally chills the speech of people who should be expressing themselves.
100%. You took the words out of my mouth.
Gotcha. I
So,
really thank you,
yeah,
Randy, for bringing that up.
yeah.
Yeah. So, and yes, the law is changing. The law is always changing. It's going to change through either the legislature, they're passing new laws or amending what they have. There can be different decisions that come down from the court saying, no, this is actually how these kinds of cases and this kind of rule is going to be applied here. And a lot of
Mhm.
law right now is coming out of the executive branch with executive orders and big changes to the agencies and changes to staffing, which trickles down to just nothing being able to get done. Permitting is slowing down. Communications at the agencies are slowing down. Not many
Mhm.
people doing their jobs at those agencies. I had somebody the other day who was trying to negotiate a loan with SBA and was legitimately asking whether they had a chance of doing that in the next 12 months because nobody works at SBA anymore. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's real. Thank you, Sasha.
Yeah.
Uh, I think so. I think I was asking, like, is there anything else other than what's on this slide
I
for the
know.
requirements or eligibility? Like, how do people get in here? Anything else, guys?
That looks like it covers it, Andy, unless I'm wrong, but
I have a friend in the program that I met through the program. We've never met in person. She's 3 years in. She lives in New Jersey. She is a really, really motivated person. I don't exactly know what her plans are. I believe she's going to practice like some sort of administrative or federal law. I don't, that all I know about that is what she's told me. But I think the point is that if you're self-driven, there's a certain amount of flexibility and
Yeah.
opportunity within this program for different types of people. But that self-drivenness, and this, back to your question, way about like how do you learn this stuff while you're working full time or at on the job, you don't. You really have to have, I mean, you learn some of it, you learn a lot of it, but in terms of sitting for the bar exam, which does not relate to like Vermont laws and statutes and practices, it's, you know, federal, big, you know, common law, federal stuff. So you really have to have an incredible amount of self-motivation and self-dedication and discipline, at least for me. I also kind of vacillated for a year, thought about it every day before enrolling, um, and was sure when I did that I was going to make it count, and devote the time and the mental energy that it would take to do it. Um, and it wasn't a small feat. I mean, it was a massive sacrifice for me. It was law school. That's the way
Yeah.
I had a 40-hour-a-week job all day, every day, you know. And then I was teaching essentially, I mean, and I wish I could have gone to law school. I wish that anyway, but I treated my evenings and weekends as law school. It was exhausting, and it was, you know, constant, but you know, happy I did it, but you can't underestimate the amount of like self motivation that it requires.
Absolutely. It is an enormous effort. Go ahead, Wei Wei.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying, Samantha, because, well, I have a couple of questions, but I wanted to respond to Samantha's comment is in looking at the program, just being surprised at how many hours are expected, and also the timeline that things have to be completed. Not necessarily like a topic has to be learned, but to do the reporting, like report every 6 months about your progress and making sure that you're learning these topics. So I really appreciate what you're saying of that. Like, what is the cost benefit of this program versus law school? Really figuring that out, because if you are working full time versus like, so there's a cost of that. And then there's also like a physical exhaustion because you also have to work full time. And you go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, well, I still have another question, but just thinking about folks who don't currently work in a law office as a paralegal or in some other role, how challenging that might be, because like, if you're trying to get hired by the law firm, to start this kind of a program, but how do you distinguish yourself from folks who are already in that field in some way?
I mean, briefly, my history is that I grew up in Vermont. I got a Bachelor of Arts in French. I moved out west for my 20s and waitressed and lived in California and Wyoming and, you know, just adventured. I moved back to Vermont when I was like late 20s. I got my teaching license. I taught French for a handful of years, realized that that was not a good fit for me long term. And I really had like a moment when I was like 30, I don't know, 33, early mid 30s. And I was like, teaching's not for me. I don't know what to do. And I happened to be in the theater background too. I was in a play with Tom, my boss and mentor.
Really?
Now we're in a play together. We're in the Pirates of Penzance at a community
Oh
theater.
my gosh, sorry, I know this guy.
And I was at a moment of like really just asking everyone in my orbit, hey, what do you do? What do you do? What's your job like? What, you know what I mean? And Tom was like, oh, I'm an attorney. And I was like, I've never thought about it. I don't think I'd ever been in a law firm before. I don't know that I'd met an attorney. I mean, I started from absolute scratch, bare bottom. And I met with Tom, we went to coffee, and I liked what he said. I didn't know anything about the program. But I liked, you know, it was interesting to me. It was something new. You know, I'm sort of a student forever. It was something new. I'd never thought about any of this, anything to do with the legal world. And I just got hired as the closing coordinator for the real estate department. Very entry level, very entry level, and loved it. And a year or so in, Tom was like, "Hey, you should think about this program." So that's how I did it. I mean, I didn't come to the firm looking with this program in mind. I didn't even know about it. But I think, I don't know, you know, you look for law firms that are hiring, and if you've got this program in mind, you know, that might be a great thing to mention. I don't know, on your first interview, if you've researched it, to show, like, you know, you've got goals.
Yeah.
That's
Uh,
that's super helpful. Sorry, Nicole.
I was going to say that's why I flipped to this slide, because I want to hear from Kira as well, and then Andy, if you have any other ideas. But go ahead, Wei. You had another question.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying, Samantha, and especially thinking about like not coming from that background and then hopping into it. So that's super helpful. The other question was just if someone were in a law program previously, like either they left the program partway through, or if they like dropped out, whatever the case might be, could they enroll in this program without re-enrolling in law school again? And would they be able to bypass some of those hurdles potentially?
I don't know. Can they wave on topics, Andy?
So you can get, if you've done some kind of law program before, you can get up to 2 years of credit towards the 4 years requirement. So if you've gone to law school for a year, you may be able to get a year's worth of credit towards the program.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah,
I did want to touch on a couple of things that Samantha and Kira were saying in terms of self-motivation. You know, just going to a sort of a more bird's eye view. Obviously, the advantage of the law office study program is you don't have to pay for law school, and so you're studying for the law, and you're, you know, for the most part, you're working for the attorney, so you're actually getting paid. You're not about to take the bar exam and start your legal career with $150,000 in debt. Another
or more.
or more, right? Or another advantage of the law office study program, as we talked about, is you're getting out of your education. You're going to be able to hit the ground running where a law student can't, because you have skills, you have lawyering skills that the law student does not have. But one of the things that is a challenge for the law office study program is you're actually getting more practice in the practical aspects of the bar exam, and you're not getting as much doctrinal instruction. So as Samantha was saying, you know, you really have to be self-motivated to, all right, you know, I just worked 8 hours at this law firm, and I've been sitting in a deposition for 8 hours, or I've been in court helping my mentor attorney. Now I've got to go home and I've got to study criminal law because my attorney doesn't do criminal law. And Samantha and Kira can chime in on this, but I think the law office study people that are successful at the bar exam are people who are self-motivated enough to do that study on top of their employment. So it's a challenge, but it obviously can be done, and it's been done by many people. And just so you know, that, you know, when you get out of the law office study program and you pass the bar, there's no stigma on it in Vermont. In fact, people look, you know, please, oh, you did the law study program, great. Let's interview you. You know, we've had law office study people. The chair of the board of bar examiners, which is the board that deals with licensing in Vermont, is currently the current chair is a law office study graduate. There's another member of the board who's a law office study graduate. We had, not too long ago, we had a woman on the Vermont Supreme Court who was a law office study graduate.
Justice Skoglund.
You know, it's got a long history. So in Vermont, it's not only well accepted. I think Vermonters, and especially the legal community, take pride about the law office study program.
Yes, we do. And you will find firms like Bauer Gravel Farnham. That's where I got my career started. You will find firms that are dedicated, that will be looking for their next LOS participant. They graduate one and they look for their next one. And Tom, that just delights me that Tom got you to do that. They've had a couple of different people who've been through, including some people who are currently attorneys there. So that's a potential. There are firms who like to do this. There is a list of potential mentors that attorney licensing maintains. So that's one potential resource. Working for an attorney who's open to an apprenticeship. This can look at different ways though. So one question I have for you, Andy, is are people almost always in firms? Do you ever have anybody who's working in a court or who is in an agency or anything like that?
Trying to think of who, let me see if I can pull up our current list and see if I can find the, we have judges who I think have been supervisors. I believe there are people in state attorney's offices and the legal aid and the defender general who are supervisors. Just gonna pull it up to see if I can see where everybody is.
There's different types of practice in these different settings too, while Andy's looking for that. Law firms are going to be generally more broad general practice. So they'll have more of the like civil litigation and estate planning and trusts and family law and just sort of multiple practice groups within the same firm. If there's more than one attorney, they'll have a niche or an area that they practice, and they match up to have a pretty broad area of practice. Government agencies are going to be specific to the area that they have been delegated for their subject matter. Courts can be either broad, like the civil division, or they can be specific, like the family division. But working with judges, there are some positions that open up in the courts for docket clerks, for people who are just maintaining the court's business, that would allow somebody to supervise under a judge. That's going to be that would actually be a really great opportunity to get broad exposure to a lot of different legal subjects, because there's other judges to network with, much like there's other firms like Samantha and Kara talking about.
Yeah, so
what'd you find?
I'm looking at the and there's people all over the place. There are judges on this list who are supervisors. There are people in legal aid, which is criminal defense, who are supervisors. There are people who are in small firms. There are people who are in big firms. I'm seeing somebody, there's people who are in, sort of private agencies. They're kind of from all over the place.
I mean, heck, you could even find yourself in like a company that has in-house counsel and worm your way into an apprenticeship with the in-house counsel. I could see that.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah, I guess so my question is, how are supervisors identified and selected, if you will? And how do attorneys become part of that list? And also, sorry, so many questions. If you identify an attorney who is on that list, who is not in your area, like, is it more challenging to, work with them? I mean, I imagine it would be more difficult, because if you're trying to work within their practice in order to go through this program, it's more challenging. So I imagine that it limits.
You're actually not limited to the list. So the list that Andy has are people who are attorneys who've just expressed interest in being a supervisor. I found my supervisor by, I responded to an entry-level job opening as a legal assistant. I had 3 years of college. I started working at the firm. After a year, my eventual supervising attorney approached me and asked me if I wanted to do the program. So I was very flattered. I looked into it. It was a wonderful opportunity, and I enrolled with her, but she had never had a LOFA study student before. So you're not limited. Really, anyone who is licensed in the state for the prerequisite amount of years, whether it's 3 or 5, I can't recall, but they're eligible. So it's just a matter of, are they willing to supervise you, and are they willing to take over the responsibilities of being a supervising attorney, which are generally, showing you the ropes, giving you opportunities for on-hands learning, overseeing your progress reports so that they're accurate. They have to attest to the accuracy of those as well. But you can really find your own mentor. And as long as they understand, I think some mentors are a little put off by the idea of, oh my God, I have to teach this person everything. No, they don't have to teach you everything.
Mm-mm.
They have to teach you what they know, and they have to be your professional mentor. But if they practice in one particular field and don't have experience in others, you can supplement that, like I was saying before, with resources and other connections. So I think anyone who, if you find an attorney who you respect, who you look up to, who has qualities that you would like to see in yourself as an attorney, and you would like to mentor under them, you should approach them. I think that a lot of attorneys, especially at my firm, my attorneys love to joke that they had they made me themselves. So I am the attorney that they have always wanted. I am the associate that they have always wanted. So they get a ready-made attorney who practices exactly the way they want to, and they're happy. So it just sort of
That's so good.
right fit.
That just cracks me up
Samantha,
because I'm like,
I see you nodding
Go
your
ahead.
head, Samantha. It
Yeah.
seems like maybe you agree.
I've thought about
Yeah.
that too. I've thought about that too. Just in terms of like, if I had to, I mean, I'm pretty sure my firm's going to hire me. But
Of course they are, Samantha.
Of course they are. Can confirm. I mean, Harry
that's
didn't confirm it, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
agreement we have. But if they hadn't, I've thought in my head, okay, how do I interview for the job? And what I would say is, everything I know you guys taught me. You know what I mean? Like all of my habits, I mean, I was a fully grown human being before I came to work here, and I was an adult. You know what I mean? I was 30, young 30s. Like I had a life and experience and a lot of character develop. You know what I mean? Like I was a full grown adult. But yeah, that's what I would say. The same thing is like, you guys know, there no surprises here. About my practice will be as you've taught me and mentored me to do.
Yeah.
So perfect fit for your firm.
It really is.
Versus
That's what they love that.
Yeah, and versus a law student who they may not have a relationship to, they may not
Yep.
feel comfortable that they are ready to jump into practice. I mean, I got cases the day I got admitted. So I was taking a deposition like 2 months later. So it was, I'm ready. And in a way that a lot of graduates from law school aren't ready. So you have a little bit of a leg up. And I think that can be quite attractive if you're trying to attract a mentor. If they see that, if they see the investment potential in you, I think it can be a really wonderful kind of mutually beneficial relationship.
I'm just going to say that you all should definitely use that in your negotiation for salary. Please and thank you. So, so are there guides then for how to approach, like, okay, well, there you go. And then also from the supervising attorney side, are there guides for them as well? So I'll let you do your slides.
You're good. I've only got the two more, and I don't know if there's a guide for supervising attorneys. I'm going to let these guys answer that question. I laid out the process as far as I understand it, and here's like, you guys can fix me on this. Learn the laws, learn legal analysis.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Nicole. Yeah. The first step is learn all the laws. Excuse me.
That is not step one, Nicole.
I'm sorry.
That's step 1 through 11. That's like you are always learning. And like we talked about earlier, the law is always changing. So you're always
right. So learn some approximation of the current version of the laws is number 1 through 11. Learn how to do legal analysis, which, as I mentioned, is a skill. Learn how to write like a lawyer. Learn how to lawyer. Learn lawyering skills. Pass the MPRA. That's one thing we have not mentioned, is that there's this whole body of rules, the rules for professional conduct that dictates what lawyers can and cannot do. It's legal ethics. That is another part of licensure. In order to become a licensed attorney, you have to have a passing score on the MPRA, the multi-state professional responsibility exam. And that requires about 2 weeks of hard study before you take the test. You pass it. It's not that hard. It's just confusing questions. But that is one thing that you'll have to do before you can actually get licensed. So study legal ethics, pass the MPRE at some point before you take the bar exam. Every 6 months, you pay a filing fee and do your report, what you've been studying and what you're going to study next. Then I separate that from studying for the bar exam. I heard your tail though, Kira, because you're studying the entire time and you only have at the most 10 months of access for the extended access for one of those bar prep programs. Study for the bar exam is often a separate study period. It is especially for law students, but not necessarily for LOS participants. There is another part for the bar exam. You have to pass the character and fitness test. And I think you administer that, don't you, Andy?
It's not a test. It's just an
Can't hear you.
It's not a test.
You're right.
It's just you have to fill out an extensive application and basically tell the character and fitness committee about all of the details of your past, and then it's reviewed by our character and fitness committee to make sure that there's nothing that would impact your ability to be a lawyer.
I want to ask Andy, so what does that mean? Like, your past? Like, what do you mean past? Like, you got seizures, or like what is it in detail? Sorry, I'm just saying, like, you could have cancer, like, what is it,
It's everything. It's it's where you've lived for the last 10 years. It's, do you have any debts? Do you have any criminal convictions? Have you ever been kicked out of school? Have you ever been censured by any kind of licensing authority?
You have any traffic tickets? Those have to be reported.
Oh my goodness! I'm ranking up. I should just stop. I should stop the course right now because I'm a traffic. I got a lot of it. Going to UVM. It's a hard one for me. I stopped them up.
Deep, but it's not. But just because you have a lot of traffic tickets is not necessarily going to keep you from being an attorney.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, not the traffic tickets.
They're not testing how many things you've done wrong in your life. They're not testing how many tickets you've gotten. They're testing your ability to be a lawyer, which means that if you have had traffic tickets, are you disclosing them? Are you pretending that they don't exist? Right?
Oh, no.
A lawyer has the character and fitness to say, okay, I did a lot of speeding and here's the traffic tickets. Sorry about that. But this is it, right?
I was going to say, Burlington doesn't help us. Okay.
No,
my college years,
especially if you're black and you're driving while black, I'm sure it doesn't help you.
Oh my God, it does not help. But I did pay all my tickets because I was like, oh my gosh, should they go back and then look at that? And they're like, shit.
Yeah.
This is what we got going on. Ooh, good luck.
So again, disclosure is what they look for. They want to test that. They're not testing it. Sorry, it's an examination. Are you able to be honest and tell people about the ways that you've messed up? Are you able? And there have been people admitted to the bar. For example, I had a friend who did a number of years for federal level fraud and did some time in prison and was able to reform themselves and demonstrate that they had gone through a lot of work to learn from their mistakes, to address the problems that they made, to address the addictions that got them there in the first place. They were admitted to practice law because they demonstrated that they have the character and fitness to practice law.
I see. Okay. All right.
I hope that helps a little bit. Don't worry too much about the traffic tickets. Don't let it stop you.
I'm over here. I'm like, I paid all my traffic tickets.
Oh, no.
But it's just school, undergrad. Yeah. We've all been there.
Yeah, I was there. So pass character and fitness examination. I'll fix that on the thing I send over. Way. Pass the bar exam and don't implode. That's the key. It's a really, really big, stressful event. And then, of course, I don't know what happens after that, but hopefully after that you profit. That's the idea. There is what is that? Samantha,
Me?
Are you okay? Yeah, that was you.
I have no idea. I heard it too, but
that was weird. Okay.
Nicole, can I add to your list? The one thing you pass the bar exam and profit is apply for admission. So that's the period. That's what Samantha's in, where you pass the bar. You're in this weird little limbo where you pass the bar, but you're not actually a licensed attorney yet. So you have to apply for admission. And so when you admission, I think it's a form. You have to attest to some stuff and send in some money, and they process it. But it can be a few months between taking the bar exam and becoming admitted. Like I said, mine was I took the bar in February. I was admitted in August because in the interim, after they do the bar exam, and you find out you passed, that's when they process your character and fitness. So that can take some time. So it's a few months. It's not immediate that you're licensed, but that's the next step after passing.
Thank you. Good point. And I'll add that to the slides as well before I send it over, Wei. I've got the link here to the reporting form. I've got some other links to resources on the next slide, but there's a really good letter to registrants that I'm glad that you linked me to it, Andy, that gives some suggestions. Because of the low passage rate for people who read the bar, this is the suggestions from the Board of Bar Examiners to try to help people in the LOS program improve their bar exam chances. One of those is close to the beginning of the course of study, take the LSAT and or the GRE. These are two tests that are designed to test the legal reason, or not the legal reasoning, the ability to analyze and reason that makes somebody an effective lawyer. So taking the LSAT close to the beginning of the course of study helps somebody who's entering the program figure out like where do they sit in the spectrum for the LSAT score. The LSAT score in law school is the one thing that we have to predict the GPA of the student and their likelihood of success on the bar exam. So the higher the LSAT score that anybody gets, the higher their chances of actually having the analysis skills to pass the bar exam. It does want everybody to learn the tested subjects and not the ones that are not on the list. One that comes to mind that would be really attractive to most people would be something like intellectual property, which is patents and copyright and trademark. That is often a part of practice in some offices, definitely not tested on the bar exam. There's some other subjects too that are not coming to mind that are just, they're very common areas of practice, but they're just not tested on the bar exam. So have to focus on the subjects that are tested. Trying to learn all of those. There's also a brown bag law study program that I've got linked to over here that I'll mention. The other thing that the Board of Bar Examiners suggests is to practice your legal writing. This is a very difficult skill to develop, to perfect. Takes an entire career to perfect, but most people who start out have some degree of ability to do legal writing. There is, on this letter to registrants, there's a number of suggestions for points during the study program at which participants really should be doing a legal writing test under timed test conditions, apply their skills. There's 3 opportunities to have, I think the Board of Bar Examiners review submissions. They'll do timed responses to essays, and then they'll submit them for an evaluation for feedback. Every opportunity you can. If you're going through this program, take advantage of legal writing, time test conditions. That's one of the hardest things for people to develop without law school study. Go ahead, Wei.
Sorry for all the questions. And if anyone else has questions, please feel free to jump in.
Please do.
I appreciate Asha for doing that. So when I was like studying for GRE, I was reading some like research papers because I wanted to get into a master's program. Would it be helpful to read legal cases to like learn how legal writing is done?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the benefits of this program is so obviously reading legal cases is wonderful because the opinions that the court issues will show you the analysis. It will also teach you some stuff like on what citations are supposed to look like, that sort of thing. And they can just teach you a lot about the subjects. So that's a really wonderful thing to do throughout the course of your study is to read, kind of seminal cases in the areas that arise that you have to study. And also, if you do work for a law firm or some kind of agency that does legal writing, legal research, take every opportunity possible to engage in that. So like even if it comes to just, you guys are filing lawsuits, you guys are answering discovery, propounding discovery, meaning, asking for information, take on those assignments, be proactive with your supervisor and ask them, hey, can I do the first draft of this? And can you give me some feedback? If there's a motion that has to be done, hey, can I research the issue and send you a memorandum summarizing the law? Can I even take a crack at the motion? Can we discuss this together? Use every opportunity available to you to hone your skills in legal research and writing. There's many opportunities throughout the program, depending on the kind of supervisor you have and the kind of practice that they have.
Yeah. Any other
question, actually, Nicole?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. How much sleep do you all get while in the program? I'm just thinking about like the parents on this call or folks who are, either like have other things that are going on. Did you sleep?
I'm with you on that. I'm a mom of 2.
I'll say I didn't. I was lucky I don't have children, but throughout the program, I also had a life. I had weekends, I had evenings. I did not, we don't get scared when you hear 25 hours requirement. I even asked Andy this question up at the beginning. The 40 hours a week I was working at the law firm doing paralegal and law clerk duties counted toward that. So really the whole thing of my extracurricular time was to review subjects that I wasn't exposed to during my work time. But I had a life. I was able to sleep. I was able to enjoy weekends. The one thing that I did that was pretty helpful was I revised my schedule with my boss to work for 10-hour shifts a day or 10-hour shifts a week. So I had a 3-day weekend essentially. And that was helpful because I got to use one of those days to study, have the extra two to have a weekend, and just maintaining a level of work-life balance is going to let you survive this because it is 4 years. There's a lot to learn, but you do not have to learn it all at once. You do have time before the exam to cram like everyone else. I crammed the same way many people who graduate law school cram. I spent 2 months before the exam on a leave of absence from work, and I did absolutely nothing but study. And I think that particular time, that 2 months before the exam, doing nothing but study, is what allowed me to pass the exam. Not necessarily, although I think it did help me contextualize what I was learning, the 4 years that I did before that. So you get to have a life.
Yeah, you do. All right. Anything else to offer here, guys? I've got this slide, which has a bunch of resources on it. The one I wanted to mention is the second bullet point. Last year, the Vermont Bar Association did a program to try to fill in the gaps for the law office study program participants who don't have those areas of practice in their firm. So you can see here, there's Brown Bag Law Study Program covers some of those other areas. And those are just short little 1 to 2 hour lectures that you can watch once you're part of the program that give you basically what you need to pass the bar in that area. You can see there's a list of study aids here. There's the just basically all the information. There's going to be some free questions online to practice with. When you get to the point where you're doing practice bar questions, there are some available. A lot of this is pay to play. A lot of this is going to need to be able to have resources to pay for it. Encourage you if you get into this program to have your employer pay those costs. That would be absolutely appropriate. And then you can see here the multi-state professional responsibility exam I've got linked down at the bottom. The 3 bullet points above that, I just want to draw people's attention to because those are the 3 parts of the bar exam currently. I don't know if that's going to change at all with the next gen, but currently there's the MBE, the multi-state bar exam, which is the multiple choice, 1 area of law per question, and it tests the main subjects in law that we study. There is the short essay, the multi-state essay exam, which is, as it implies, short essays. I think there's 6 short essays. And then there's the MPT, the multi-state performance test. This is the one I referenced that it's more of a law office type exercise where they give you a case file and a certain number of cases and laws that you have to interpret and put together a memo or a closing argument or something like that. So there's the resources. I will make those couple of edits and send those over to you way so that everybody's got the current information. But that's the end of the substantive information we have here. I just want to invite any other comments from our panelists or questions if people have them.
So a couple of things on the resources. Sorry about that. Just a couple of things on the resources. So the next gen, all the different parts, instead of a multiple choice separate section and a subject matter essay section and a performance test, all of that's going to be kind of molded into one. So there's going to be like a fact pattern, and then there'll be several different questions.
Okay.
But just on the resources, one other thing that's great out there, and I don't know how much Kira or Samantha use it, is that we have an email group list of people who are participants, both current and past participants, as well as lawyers who have been supervisors or are supervisors. So you can always pick the brains of people who are doing the program now or have done the program. Sounds like Kira, you may have gotten your study group together because of that.
Exactly right. It's a wonderful resource. We did one study group that covered the Vermont rules of civil procedure, another that we basically just met every week and just read a rule, discussed it, talked about cases involving it, and having like a little community. And we met virtually on Zoom. We were spread across the state. When some of us are in different states, you don't have to live in Vermont. I was actually going to mention this when Samantha mentioned her friend in New Jersey. I live in New Hampshire. You do not have to live in the state of Vermont to enroll in the program. There's actually a case involving this, but you do not have to live in the jurisdiction. So if you can meet by Zoom, you can meet in person, just have a connection. Me and Samantha have a line of connection, which is wonderful. And just having a little bit of a community because you don't have classes, you don't have peers in the same way as you do with law school, which is really wonderful. You kind of have to find your own people to connect with, commiserate with, learn with. And the Law Office Study Listserv is a really wonderful resource for that. I've used it countless times, asking for study group participants or questions about stuff, volunteering advice to current participants. It's a really great resource. So definitely connect with Andy on that, and he can get you added to that list if you're interested.
Great. Thank you. I think you're going to, are you Sasha?
No.
Stephanie,
no.
sorry.
Stephanie, I'm sorry. I saw the S and I was like, you're Sasha. No, you're not Sasha. You're Stephanie. Go ahead.
So I have like a few different questions, but maybe I can connect with someone like outside of this meeting. So like I almost have, it's complicated, but like I basically have a bachelor's degree in legal studies and I have a master's degree in social work. So those things are in law school stuff, but I'm wondering if any of that might, kind of apply to this program. Because I know some schools, like I went to UConn, they have a dual program for law school and social for your MSW, where because some of the classes overlap, it's less years than going to each school separately. So I just wondered who I could connect with to kind of go over like my more specific situation, maybe.
Yeah, I can answer that a little bit. So you can't get prior credit for your undergraduate work. We get that every once in a while, where somebody did a paralegal degree. You can't get credit for that because it's sort of double counting because you're already required to have a bachelor's in order to start the program in the first place. So that may be a little bit of bad news. You wouldn't be able to get anything for the BA in legal studies. You wouldn't be able to get any credit for it.
But it does count as that bachelor's degree that you need for the program.
It does count as the bachelor's degree, which is a prerequisite to do the program. Yeah.
And would it make any difference that I was a double major with legal studies and psychology?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay.
I think what you're saying is if there's like law school study, if somebody had been in law school or been in a law school like study program, they could count that time, right?
Yeah, we get sometimes people who did law school abroad. You can get that. You can get that. People who went and did a master's degree, people who did some parts of a law degree but just didn't finish it for whatever reason. If you were in another law office study like program, you can get credit for that. Some people have gone to, so the American Bar Association accredits law schools, and there are several law schools out there that are not accredited by the American Bar Association. So some people have taken courses from non-ABA accredited law schools, and that counts. Some people have just taken like a course here and there from a law school. Those would count. It's just the undergraduate degree doesn't count because it's already required as the prerequisite to get into the program in the first place.
So what I'm hearing, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. This is Asha. So what I'm hearing is, let's say, because I have one of my good friends, she's a lawyer, but she took a political science as her undergrad, right? So if you had a political science undergrad degree, would that, because of credits, transfer over?
No.
No,
No,
again, you
no
have,
undergrad degree will.
yeah, no
No,
undergrad
no,
degree.
none.
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no. You can count it as the BA or the BS that get into the program, but the
I see.
credits itself don't count from the undergrad because the undergrad degree itself is like required to get into the program. And then after the undergrad degree, if there's any law study, that might count towards the LOS program.
Sheesh, why do we go to college? I'm just kidding. I
Right?
want to make all of us laugh this afternoon.
Thank you, Asha. And I'm sorry I called you Sasha. I don't know why I thought your name was
I know
Sasha.
you
You're
called me
Asha.
It's
I'm
okay. You know,
sorry.
I've been Asia, Sasha. I take it. I take a grain of salt.
Thank you. I don't know. Wei and Sonia, I'm not sure which of you goes first. Sonia, please.
I want to piggyback on that same question about what you just mentioned about the classes being able to be accredited. For how long is that valid? I started a JD. How long ago? Oh God, in 2016. And I had to stop in 2017. Would those classes still be
It's
accreditable,
it's
or it's been too long?
possible. It's
It's possible.
possible. But you hit it right on the head. You know, the issue is how long ago did you take it, and is the information still in your head? Is it not stale? Somebody again, it depends. It depends. You'd have to make the case that it's not too long ago and that you were somehow maybe using the knowledge that you gained from those classes recently.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Another question, a totally different one. English is not my first language. And you just mentioned that an LSAT or GRE would need to be we would need the results for an LSAT or GRE test. I am
You
not
don't have to
sure.
have it. It's
Yeah,
just good practice.
Oh,
I,
okay,
yeah.
okay. We don't
I
have to,
would,
because I haven't, but from more than 5 years ago, and so I don't think
Right.
those results are even available anymore.
I think
But
Kira's got a comment here, but I just wanted to mention it. The suggestion is to take it close to the time that you start the program of study so that you have like a snapshot. What would I get for the LSAT score, the GRE score right when I begin? That will help you assess your strengths and weaknesses for what you need to develop. Go ahead, Kira.
oh,
Oh, but it's
okay.
not necessary at all. I never took the LSAT. I never took the GRE. It's a helpful tool for identifying your strengths as a test taker, and your strengths with that kind of analysis on a test in a test-based setting. But it is not at all necessary or a requirement any means.
Okay. Thank you for answering that portion. So English is not my first language. Have you ever witnessed a situation like that? Are there any limits or requirements for when someone starts a program or when it's gonna take the test exam for the English level?
I mean,
Oh, no.
I'm sure that we've had people pass the exam who English is not their first language. Um, we do see that with people I think the biggest challenge, and again, it's not something that can't be overcome, is just the writing aspect of things. So I guess that's what I would recommend is that you know do more writing than someone else might do just to practice.
Yeah.
But
I'll
it's not it's but it can be done. It's definitely not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I'll add that my good friend Chelsea, Spanish is her first language, not English, and she passed the bar exam on her first try. She went to law school. It's really a matter of having strong reading comprehension and writing skills, not so much verbal. So it is absolutely possible.
I'll jump in. I'll piggyback on that. So I'm an SLP. So I speak 4 languages, right? But I teach students that don't always have that language, and I'm trying to almost navigate, because the thing is, your brain's doing a lot of work, right? To all the people who speak different languages. Let's do a thumbs up. I speak for. But what I've found as being an SLP is, hey, there is a challenge. I had to take the state test to become a citizen. I had to learn things that I have students that I ask that don't know even what the state of Minnesota is. Or like what's the state of California? It's like what is the capital? They don't even know, but I had to do that work. So I will advocate for that question, because to say, no, it's not how much work you put in, is how much work are we going to put in that is also accommodating to people who do have different multilingual languages. Done.
Thank you, Asha.
I'll just back that up, that for folks, because my question is around the immigrant refugee community, and just for those folks who might be English might be their third, fourth, fifth language, it would be nice to have additional supports as well as additional time potentially for a program like this. And so my actual question is, for folks who are immigrant refugee folks who were practicing lawyers in the country, can they test out of any part of the courses, or maybe get that additional leg up? Because if they were already practicing, and yes, it's not US law, it is maybe from a different country, what benefits do they have?
Yeah.
In that case, when someone, and maybe, I'm sorry if you're going to jump in here, Andy, I'm just going to say real briefly, if somebody has a law degree from another country, they can generally, there's ways to get it converted into a law degree here. They sometimes have to do an LLM for American legal studies to be able to bring it into the country. But what were you going to say, Andy?
Yeah, so that's right, Nicole. So if they've taken a law degree from a common law country, meaning a country that's got a legal system like ours, like the English, then in general that person can get their degree determined to be equivalent to a U.S. degree and take the bar exam just based on that degree.
And what are those countries? Because it's hard. I come from Africa. I'm colonized. I'm colonized just about, every country in England. What does that look like, and how does that look like for other people who come from different countries?
You have to look at what
civil law.
What I do is I Google. I asked Google. I said, is this country a common law country? And some are common law countries, some are civil law countries, some have some kind of mixed system. So it's all based on the particular law.
So give me the definition of common law countries.
Just so we can get. To define.
Sorry, I'm not giving you a history. I know this is teacher in me, but give me an example of what common law countries are, because everybody, common law. I mean, I don't know. We live in America. We're all common law. So it's like, what is it? Where?
It's basically based on the English system, whereby there are statutes, and then there are and that are created by the legislature, as well as case law decisions by judges that also make up the law.
Oh, okay. So like, I'll give you an example. So like, in Africa, right? It's the second biggest continent. I've been trying to tell my students, they still think it's a country. It's not. It's a continent.
Oh,
no. So South Africa, is that common law?
You know what? I might have had that question the other day. I don't. You know what? I'm just going to Google it right now.
Yeah, I think Australia, Britain.
So I Googled it really quickly.
It's where you're colonized. It's really it's Congo is like common law, because it's where you were colonized by new.
So Google says that South Africa has a mixed legal system blending Roman Dutch law with elements of common law, customary law, and other legal traditions.
Yeah, after they killed Nelson Mandela. It's okay, keep going.
Ghana is the only country that practices common law, in the continent.
Yes, absolutely.
So
It's probably Australia, England, America,
Pakistan, India.
Canada.
Canada,
Canada does.
yep. So it's hard when you say common law because you have to know, you have to know geography. Half
Yeah.
of us don't know geography. I tell you, my kids, my students know nothing. You don't even know
No.
Canada's just right there.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Sonia, you've
sorry.
had your hand up
Sorry.
for a while, Sonia. That's
I
okay,
know,
Asha.
but the thing is, we don't teach geography, so it's
I
hard as
know.
an educator to just be like,
Hmm.
"Hey, like, where is this? Which continent?" I don't want to hear that. You have to know. You have to know that this
Yeah.
country is over here, like Alaska. Where's Alaska? They don't know.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Hi.
it's bad. It's bad. It's bad up in here. The education system. We got to do better. We got to do better.
Yeah.
Hi.
So
Can I?
just to be oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Sonia. You've had your hand up for a while, and then I'm sorry. I'm not sure your name, but it
Sorry,
says iPhone.
Sonia.
It's okay.
I went on my little teacher rant.
You're okay.
Just to pitch in a little bit on knowing what kind of law the country that we have. I'm an attorney too in the Dominican Republic. And looking at the history, when the country was created, the founding father, to I don't know, the meaning may
Oh.
get lost a little bit in translation, got the model of the nation from France because that's where he grew up and that's where he studied. So when the Dominican Republic was created, they basically copied and pasted most of the basic codes of like civil law, penal law, and that is still hundreds of years later happening. In Puerto Rico, they have a mixture. They were first colonized by the Spaniards, and then after they lost the war and in United States was in charge of the island, then they brought the common law, which to the best of my knowledge, to the best of my understanding, this is from the point of ignorance, is what took the English law, which is usually the one that I've known as common law, as their
Absolutely.
like basis. So they had a mix. I think that the criminal law, the penal code, was common law, and the civil laws were from the Spaniard, which was very similar to the French, which was from the Roman law. And to pitch in a little bit in the education portion, in case this helps, my parents are teachers, and I think that's what I've seen at home, that most of the education that us kids got was really part of what my parents do. The school is a very good base, but it's basically what I have at home. My kids are, I have three daughters. They are 8, 6, and 3. And the decoration in their bedroom is basically maps. Their
Cool.
toys are not electronic, and their toys are basically stuff related to what I want them to learn about life. And we get together and we're watching TV. So this weekend we watched Hamilton.
Oh,
My
love it. I
kids
love watching
already
that with my
know.
kids.
Yeah, my kids already know who were the first 3 presidents of the nation.
Yeah.
Especially because I didn't grow up here. So there's a lot of the history here that I don't know. But that's
Same.
not an excuse for my kids not to know it just because I don't know. At the same
Absolutely.
time, I have in the room a world map, and once in a while I run a few questions. Which country is this? In which continent? How many continents are there? Where is this country located? What's the capital? We have also a map of the United States, and we have a map of the countries that we have lived in.
It's
And we
geography. I
just
a
talk
hundred
about
percent.
that.
Yeah,
So
I a hundred
just my
percent
suggestion
hear
as
you.
a mom is that yes, the system we need to work on it, but we also can do a lot at home as parents,
A great point.
especially again, the toys, the content of the decoration, what
Yes.
conversations are we having? We go to the
Yes.
table. How many pieces of avocado do you have in your plate? That's math.
Exactly.
And we're just having
Count
dinner.
it.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
I a
Great.
100% agree
Hey,
with you.
And I'm sorry, because
Thank
that's
you.
off the topic.
No, no, no,
That's
no, no, no,
fine. I love
Sonia.
it.
I
This is
get you.
great.
The thinking path is on the same because we got to do better.
Right. You've been waiting for a while to ask your question. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Debbie. Actually, I'm running shortly, but I wanted to know, I'm very interested in the program. My background, I have a degree from Rutgers University in criminal justice, and also have an associate degree in paralegal. I was a paralegal for years, currently is a purchasing agent. And I wanted to know, how can I get enrolled in the program? And if I will have to leave my current job right now to get enrolled in the program, or can I start the program and later on mentor and shadow with an attorney?
Hmm. I think I'm going to let our licensing authority handle that one if he's still there. Andy, still there, Andy? Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, challenges of working at home. Sorry, can you repeat the question? I apologize.
No, that's fine. My name is Debbie. I have a degree in criminal justice from Rutgers University in New Jersey.
Huh?
Also, I have an associate in paralegal studies. I worked several years as a paralegal,
Yep.
and I'm very interested in the program. I wanted to know, can I start without being mentored by an attorney and do the studies and eventually transition to working in a law firm? I currently work in corporate and I love my job, and I don't want to just have to walk away. I don't want it to be either or, can it be both? And if not, what is the path
Yeah.
that I can plan later on to get enrolled in the program?
To start, you have to have a mentor. So you have
Okay.
to have an attorney. You don't have to be working for that attorney.
Okay.
So if you can work it out with the attorney to do everything that's required, that's okay. But to start, you do have to have that supervising attorney.
Okay. And then would you guys provide us the list, or do I have to solicit a mentor and attorney?
I can provide you a list of attorneys who have expressed interest. So what we do is when attorneys get when they have to renew their license, we ask them, is anybody interested in being a law office study supervisor? And so they indicate that, and so we keep that information. So I can provide you with that information with a list of people who have expressed interest. It would be up to you to reach out to the people and say, hey, so you'd have to make these phone calls. But I can provide you the list.
And then Debbie, I'll also add that you can also solicit an attorney who's off the list. So if you know an attorney, like, I don't know if your corporation has an in-house counsel that might be licensed in Vermont, maybe they're available to supervise you, or any attorney who is licensed in Vermont and has been licensed for 3+ years, I think it is. If they are willing to supervise you, you can go ahead and start the program. You don't have to necessarily work for them.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know anyone because I've been in Vermont probably about 4 or 5 years. And then my job, I work remotely, and most of their people are in New York or Canada.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question. Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry.
Stephanie. You're fine.
Is
Go ahead.
Is there like a sample outline?
Sorry, give me second. Just 1 second, Stephanie. Debbie, you had one follow-up, is that right?
No, I just wanted to say thanks.
Oh, of course, no problem. Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Is there like a sample outline of like someone who's done the program and kind of how they broke up the study and the topics, for each 6 months for the 4 years?
Stephanie, I actually have shared my reports with other students just to show them the way that I've approached my study as an example. So if you'd like to connect off of this, I'm happy to send you my reports. That way you can sort of see, because really what the reports are is just you reporting to the Board of Bar Examiners what it is that you did and how. And so often it's just a matter of listing the kind of the nature of assignments you've done, listing the kind of subjects you've studied and how you studied them, whether it's by reading or watching lectures or whatever the case may be. So I'm happy to connect with you. If someone from the organization wants to send you my email, we can connect and I can give you my samples. Yeah, just so long as you don't, as long as you don't copy them or plagiarize them, you can check them out to see what it is that at least how I approach this program. But you can do it in many ways.
Yeah,
Okay,
actually, that might
thank
be
you.
a good resource. Sorry, Stephanie, did you have anything else too to follow up with?
Well, I was just saying thank you because, like, even if you go on like any school's website, if you dig deep enough, you can see like, okay, generally in your first semester, you take these courses that are prerequisite. So I just didn't know if there was any kind of structure, like, okay, I mean, I know by the 4 years you need to learn all the laws, but like,
Right. Not all the laws, almost all the laws.
Almost all the laws, but if there was.
There's no real like outline of like what order you have to do everything, which is kind of stressful because it's kind of overwhelming. It's like, oh, what do I do and how? So what I did personally was I followed essentially, or at least I tried. So law schools typically, and you can look at law schools online to see what their recommended course of study is. And often they force 1Ls, first years, and 2Ls to do the same courses. So you could follow that pattern. So for instance, your first year, you might study criminal law, tort law, civil procedure. I can't remember what else. And maybe then your next
contracts.
Maybe next year you might do evidence and constitutional law. So I kind of modeled my study a little bit based off of that, but I also made it flexible to what I have available. So like if there was a year where I was able to shadow a wills and estates attorney, then I did that during that period instead of maybe third year like law school does. So those kinds of resources can be really helpful just to see like, because I think they're pretty well thought out, the programs that law schools put out. So you could follow that model or just make one yourself.
Thank you.
I don't want to undermine learning for learning's sake, but keep in mind the biggest hurdle, at least for all this subject matter in the program, is the bar. And the bar, while it's a massive, and granted it's changing, so everything I say is kind of going to be irrelevant, but it's a massive amount of material, but it's not an infinite amount of material. It has edges, it's finite, it has borders. So that's what I told myself too, is I'm not trying to be a scholar here. Again, love learning for learning's sake, but I really am focused to what's on this test? You know what I mean? And they tell you what's on the test. That's a mystery.
Actually, that reminds me, there are subject matter outlines, Stephanie, available from the National Conference of NCBE. So if you Google NCBE subject matter outlines for the next gen bar exam, if they're available, I don't know if they are. It might just,
I think they are.
Might just be the old one. But that's a wonderful resource. I actually use those a lot during my study to make sure that I would study the things that were on the subject matter outline and not spend so much time on stuff that wasn't on the outline. So that's a really, really good resource. The NCBE subject matter outlines.
Thank you.
There is also the links in the presentation. The slide that has resources has a few links to preparation pages that NCBE offers for the different parts of the test. There's some free materials that are available to set that up. But I 100% support Kira's suggestion. That's what I was going to suggest, is like first year of law school, you do the very basics. You do torts, contracts, you do civil procedure, and you do criminal law. And that's the basics. And then exactly as Kira said, you go on and you add evidence, or you add whatever else you haven't done. You add your securities, you add your business associations, the more sort of complex rules and that are going to govern these areas. And that is a really great way to go about it. I wanted to ask Samantha, though, how did you construct your course of study?
I paid for a program called Quimby. I didn't know where to start. And I started by I spent the first 6 months looking through the old school greenhorn legal cases and things. And then at one point I was like, again, my job here is to pass the bar. So I paid for this program called Quimby, which is a legal law school supplement program. It was it's $300 a year. It was like affordable. And I treated that as my law school studies. And Quimby is awesome. It's so much better, I think, than all of the other. They also have a bar prep program. I think it is so much better than all the other bar prep programs, which have been doing the same thing the same way for like 25 years. I took a sample of their stuff and it was like, this is like my high school. This feels like I'm still back in high school. Like they were antiquated, like, well, like a guy at a lecture with a smart, like a, not even a power, slideshow. So Quimby is great. They've got little animated clips that they do for you. It's really user friendly. It's built by, I feel like it's built by educators, people that know how to teach. So I did that, and I let Quimby. Yeah, I followed all of Quimby's everything, and I let them dictate how I learned, and that was my learning. And then they also gave me a credit for all that money that I had paid the past 3 years when I was their bar program. So they took like, $300, $900 off or something for 3 years of their like annual access. Yeah.
That's a good way to do it too.
I used Quimby as well as a resource, as mostly like a supplement with the videos, and they have these little multiple choice things as well as case summaries. If you're having trouble comprehending a case that you read on your own or just checking your understanding of a case, that can be helpful. But also Barbary.com, which is one of those major bar prep companies, they have a free course that allows you to access lectures on the first year law school subjects like torts, civil procedure, constitutional law, and maybe some others. So that's a really wonderful resource. Those are the same or very close to identical as the lectures that they actually have in their bar prep course. So I used Quimby and Barbary throughout my entire study, which was wonderful. Those lectures are really great.
And it's Quimby like a B, not like a BY. So follow the one that Kira gave you, not the one that I gave you. I have 2 questions to wrap us up, unless anybody has any other suggestions or points they want to put in. I am so glad for my panelists today. For the questions are 2 questions. What do you wish you'd known before you started? So this is going to be for Kira and Samantha, technically. Although, Andy, if you have an opinion, I'll toss it to you. What do you wish you'd known before you started? And what's the best piece of advice you received from your mentor or some other attorney during the program? Kira.
Great questions. I think what
They're Weiwei's questions.
Those are wonderful. Thank you, Weiwei. What I wish I had known before I started was that I don't have to do everything perfectly. I am a huge perfectionist and I'm very much kind of like a rule follower. And I was totally overwhelmed with the thought that I can create my own course of study and it's all on me. And I felt very overwhelmed. I think there was even one point where I reached out to Andy hastily, stressed out during my first year. I was like, wait, can I go to law school and do this at the same time? I didn't even trust myself to learn what I needed to learn. And I was willing to go to law school, which I did not do. Don't do that. But then I just sort of was like, you know what? I'm just going to do what I can do with the means that I have throughout the 4 years. And then you know what? When it's time to study for the bar exam, I'm going to hire a tutor, which I did. The majority of my money that I spent throughout my program was on my tutor. I spent probably about $10,000 on my tutor because I used her for 5 months. And so that was quite an expense, but comparatively to the cost of law school, that was essentially my law school. And then Barbary was purchased by my employer, which was wonderful. But in any case, I just sort of taking a little bit of a breather and realizing like it's okay not to do perfectly. You're a student, you're learning throughout the entire thing. You've got 4 years to figure it out and just allow yourself some grace. That was, I think, what I wish I had known at the start for sure. And then my mentor, the thing that what was the question? What you appreciated the most?
What was the best piece of advice you got from your mentor or another attorney that you worked with during the program?
Yeah, my mentor, she kind of has a similar attitude. She's very like the one that I developed throughout my study about sort of just kind of like letting go of the perfectionism a little bit. She is very much a learn on the fly kind of girl, which is perfect because this program is exactly learning on the fly. And she just was instilling in me the confidence that eventually I will get there and eventually I will be the attorney I want to be. And just sort of let yourself write it out. You do not have to have it all figured out. I still have massive public speaking anxiety, even though I have to go to court and do jury selections in front of 20 people, which but you know what? That is all part of the process. And there's attorneys who sometimes I'm even soothed by the fact that my supervising attorney will go up to a jury and have a little shake in her voice. So it's a lifelong learning experience of a career, and just enjoy it and just take it day by day.
That's great. Thank you, Kira. Samantha,
Um,
what do you wish you'd known before you started, and what was the greatest piece of advice you received?
okay. Wish I'd known before I started, just because it's so fresh. The bar prep period, like I knew for 4 years I'm going to take this really big, really hard test. But the last month of it, I mean, the amount of stress and anxiety and like this constant feeling of panic, the way it manifested physically, I don't know. I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but it was so far. That was my biggest hurdle coming up in the test. It was no longer about the material. It was like, do I have the grit, or am I going to have a nervous breakdown in the middle of this? Am I even going to make it? You know what I mean? Am I going to? So it was a minor trauma.
Definitely minor is an understatement.
Yeah. Minor.
It's a little bit of a hazing experience.
It is.
But you know what? You make it out on the other side, and you're a little bit stronger as a person for it. So
yeah,
it just
as long as you don't implode. Like I said, take the bar exam. Don't implode.
It's okay if you implode a little bit. We all have it. Like I certainly imploded a lot. I discovered I had eczema all of a sudden on my hands right before the test, which was a new development. So it is universally horrible, and that's just kind of part of it.
It is. It's true. Yeah. Samantha, did you have something else, like some piece of advice that you were offered?
Sure. So the piece of advice that I was offered, so just in terms of like back to where we started about kind of the gatekeeping that exists within the legal profession, and like I said, had no exposure to the legal field whatsoever before 6 years ago when I took an entry-level job here. And I know that I will have an imposter syndrome that I will work a long time to overcome, because my impression, and it's not untrue, of many attorneys is that their dad was an attorney and their grandfather was an attorney, or their mom was a judge, or you know what I mean? And everyone went to law school already when they were 23. And so, but when I tell my mentor that, when I tell Tom that about these worries that I have, he says, yeah, but all of your experience, what differentiates you from a lot of attorneys is why we sponsored you and why you'd be a good addition to this field.
That's right.
Let's bring in like me, a 35-year-old, you know what I mean? A former teacher and a former waitress with a French degree. Why not me? What can I bring to this field? So that I want to offer as like a word of encouragement, and also a note of like how special this program is. It does not exist everywhere. It's very few and far between that a state has something like this. And I think it's just awesome. Huge fan. If anyone wants to reach out to me about any of this, I would love to continue to, be a megaphone for it.
Thank you, Samantha. Andy, I don't know if you can top that, but do you have anything to add?
No, not really. I just want to, I kind of just want to emphasize that, like, I've always enjoyed being a part of the Vermont Bar. I think it's a really friendly, really welcoming place. And I think that even though the law office study program, you're kind of limited to working in Vermont, I think it's a great place to work. And as I said before, the law office study program is such an intricate part of the Vermont legal world that it's not it's not something where you would think, oh man, someone's got a law school, they're going to hire that guy because he went to law school and I only did the law study program. In Vermont, that's absolutely not true at all. Especially if you pass the bar exam and you've come out with all of this legal experience. It's yeah. And also I was thinking about things that somebody had told me. This, a law professor, so I went to law school in New York, and a law professor, so I was trying to think about, well, should I go to Vermont? Should I go stay in New York and work? He was saying that one of the great things about going to someplace in Vermont is that everything is really, really accessible. You can do things so much easier here in Vermont. If you want to, like, any lawyer out there is within 2 phone calls of having lunch with somebody on the Vermont Supreme Court, pretty much.
It's true. It's true.
If you want to be a legislator, you can. If you want to be a judge, you can try. If you want to, work for the Attorney General, it's all really accessible. And it's just, I guess I'm just making a big plug for the Vermont legal community, I guess.
It is a wonderful community. I haven't had many negative experiences with other attorneys with opposing counsel. Even recently, I have an opposing counsel who notoriously is difficult to work with. And after a deposition, she messaged me and told me how wonderful I did. And like that is our community. Like that is the Vermont legal community. It is really unique. It is not something that you will find in a big city like New York or Boston or whatever. It is very warm and welcoming. And it's something I love about it.
Yeah, love that.
And I will just put in a plug for thank you, Nicole and Andy and Kira and Samantha for being here and talking to us about the Law Office Study Program for VT PoC community members. I'll also just say that we don't have a lot of BIPOC lawyers in the state. Mm-hmm. So if you are really considering this program, please consider it. We have at VT PoC, we have folks reaching out all the time looking for specifically a BIPOC lawyer. And we do have a handful of, actually, we literally know 2 people. So who can support. So if this is something that you have the capacity for, have the real passion for, would really love to, we as an organization would love to help you succeed. And we can talk about how we can do that as well. So, but thank you all so much for participating. I will be sending a follow-up email. I did put a link to an evaluation form as well. We want to make these webinars better for everyone. But thank you so much. Nicole, do you have any final words that you'd like to say?
No. That was it. I just so appreciate the panelists and I learned so much through this myself. And I work for a law school, guys. Don't go to law school. It's really expensive. This is a great way to get to the bar.
I'll cut that out of the recording, Nicole.
Just don't record this.
I'm going to call each and every one of your students and tell them.
No, Kara, don't do that. Yep. Actually, I talked to him about it anyways. I'm like, God, I'm so sorry that you're taking money. We're taking your money anyways. Yeah, this has been just a great presentation. Thank you, everybody. And thank you so much for the questions. Those were I loved all the questions, keep everything engaged. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you. I will send out the contact information. Have a great night. Go get dinner.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.